even the first month of just cutting out bread and grain, I started to notice the huge difference. I wasn't as tired, I wasn't as fatigued, I was, more clarity in terms of what I was, needing to do in order to process and get things done.
This episode is brought to you by Basic Keto Box. Basic Keto Box is a premium subscription box for Keto Dieters. It offers a wide variety of keto-friendly snacks delivered right to your door. Not only that, with your subscription box, you also get a 30-day meal plan that includes breakfast, lunch, and dinner, complete with macronutrients in every meal. We have an exclusive deal just for Ketones and Coffee podcast listeners. Receive an extra 20% off with your first month subscription. Head on over to basicketobox.ca to subscribe today. Hey guys, welcome to the Ketones and Coffee podcast, where I bring in guests to discuss their own personal experience with a ketogenic diet. Our next guest is very inspirational. Since he was a kid, he had struggled with both developmental language disorder and Asperger's disorder. He struggled to even speak growing up, so he had to do speech therapy to learn how to speak properly. But despite all of that, he became a voice actor and dubber. He has done the roles the likes of Norwegian Donald Duck. Yes, you heard that, Donald Duck. Since then, he also found the miracles of the ketogenic diet and discovered that it helps with his overall cognition. From living the doubts and norms to being independent, he is somebody that didn't let his own circumstances stop him from achieving his goals. Perfect. Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing quite good.
Finally. Stream Dr. Duck. Well,
Thank you.
I'm very excited to talk to you about the benefits of the keto diet. And but before we dive in, if you can introduce yourself, how you got that name?
Well, String Dr. Dark is just basically a name that I figured out. If you want to make the long story short, I'm basically a voice actor, a voice dubber. I work for a company that then works with Disney. So I basically do the voice for Donald Duck, but I do it in Norwegian.
No way.
And so
you're serious?
Yeah. Yes, I'm
serious. My God.
Of course, I'm serious.
Oh my God, that's so good. You gotta do more for me.
Oh boy.
Oh my goodness. I hit the gold mine here, guys. Wow. I'm doing this podcast because learning stories from other people inspires me to do what I do, and I help by sharing great stories to help hopefully inspire someone. Even if it's one person, it's still worth it. I always start there with my podcasts about health benefits of the keto diet. And so, what led you to the keto diet? What was the thought process?
Well, I'm 27, and for about 26 years, I started to really question about all the different issues that I had. I also have two different diagnoses. I have mild Asperger's syndrome, in addition to something called developmental language disorder.
Can you explain that in a little more detail?
Right. So there's a lot of mixed confusion about, Asperger's syndrome and, DLD that I'm talking about. But put it simply, it's really the understanding and relative to how to use language. And so, you might ask me now, it's like, well, you don't seem to have like a stuttering or any language problems. Well, if you asked me when I was about 4 years old, I couldn't really speak my own native language properly. I had to have a speech language therapist. I needed to have a bit of a system, which now, actually this year or the last year, I volunteered for a community in my country or an organization that goes for Dyslexia Norway. So they cover dyslexia, dyscalculia, and the diagnosis that I have. And there is the organization in the UK called RADLD. If you guys want to check a bit more further out, I highly recommend to go ahead and check them out. So that's just a short thing. So we kind of think about like these cognitive function as being something like outside of our control. But when I started to get a bit more invested into the ketogenic diet, I suddenly started to notice a bit more improvement in my cognitive abilities. The things that I thought was previously much more difficult to do, due to the diagnosis and everything else, suddenly started to become a little bit more clear. And so I say also for the physical health, I had a bacterial growth inside the nose that would basically produce this like a yellow gooey thing that wasn't really helpful. I've been to a couple of different types of doctors over the years. They talked about, I've been given like, antibiotics. There's been different types of cures, but the cause will remain the same. And when I decided to go for a full month of cutting out bread, grain, all the refined things I heard about the ketogenic diet, even the first month of just cutting out bread and grain, I started to notice the huge difference. I wasn't as tired. I wasn't as fatigued. I was, more clarity in terms of what I was, needing to do in order to process and get things done. And when I was communicating with people, it became a lot more clear that I could actually pay a lot more attention and to ask the right questions to kind of get things forward. So, and then you could say the voice acting work that I do, I have a period of time, booked time, that I need to sort of concentrate and I have the animation, I have the text and everything, and I communicate with the technician and the one that I'm working with, who happens to be the voice for Uncle Scrooge as well in my country. We process a lot of things, and we need to correct, and sometimes we need to change a little bit, and sometimes I say, can you try to do it like this, or can you do it like that? And it kind of requires a little bit of cognitive function to sort of be able to snap and to try different things without feeling frustrated or feeling like, things aren't going the headway. And so I truly would say that the diet itself has improved in a lot of ways of being able to focus, to concentrate, and to get on the tasks that I need to do, and not being in the cycle of doubt, worry, fear, anxiety, any of those things that would sort of prohibit, my cognitive function to basically go and do its work.
So you started, you said this year, July? Is that
yes,
right?
Yes,
So,
June, July.
So in the short amount of time, you've noticed all of this good things about the keto diet when you started. Can you tell me more in detail about what was your experience with the keto diet initially?
Well, I was, of course, feeling for within the first month or so, I definitely had maybe a week where I felt like I was a little bit fatigued. There was a little bit of, constraints and things like that. But what I initially did is, and this is what I think it's the biggest thing that I highly recommend, and this is also very important for people who are thinking about a ketogenic diet. There's a lot of data, a lot of statistics, a lot of people from all different types of part of the academia, the universe. And what I had to basically ask was, because I asked my doctor this, and this was actually the thing that I thought was really fantastic. Because usually with the mainstream media or the mainstream of Dr. Lines, they've been pretty much against the idea when it comes to the ketogenic diet, although there are two different types, and I'm going to clarify that a bit further. But when I asked my doctor, who originates from China, but, he's been working in my country quite some time, and he seemed to be quite up to date. And when I asked him about the ketogenic diet, he actually insisted and said that it will actually help for my, mild Asperger's syndrome in addition to the the developmental language disorder as well.
Wow.
And so it's quite like, a shock for me, because there are so many other doctors that would be, preferably against it. But ask yourself this real question. I've been doing the same thing for 26 years. This time I decided, you know what? I will drop anything of all the short-term comfort, because that's the main problem. It's not only just your body that basically craving it, it's also in here. And so if you really want to get better in terms of improving your ability here, you have to start right up here before you can get all the process of your physical health to basically show up.
But why are people not doing it? So I give you an example. My father, I know we talked about this. He's diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, but he doesn't really know of the keto diet. He knows that I do this kind of work right now, and I've been very diligent when it comes to letting him know of this is an option for him. That's why I said, how do I communicate this with people? How do you communicate? Do you have, family members or people around you that's disagreed with this diet?
Yes, there are many concerns about it, and I think one of the things that are pretty common is that first of all, it's very uncomfortable. It's going against the norm that we've been driven for quite some time. But let me tell you this, and I think we probably are on a very good road, and that is that it's basically called a programming. And what programming is that, let's say for many years, like you've been so used to the same thing, right? As I said, for me, it was like 26 years. I've been fed the idea that, you got to eat this, you're going to get that, get more healthier, blah, 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 blah. And you've been doing that for 26 years. And only for me, when I started to ask myself the question, it's like, well, what if I do something very different? But here's the catch. The problem is that in your brain, in your subconscious mind, you've been programmed to be doing things that goes against you, so it feels very uncomfortable. What you have to do is you have to build a new habit. Because these things aren't just, the physical elements of it. It has something to do with habit. So for an instance, if you learn the first time when you're driving a car, you probably felt very uncomfortable with the idea that you're going to have to sit on the seat, you have to stretch it up, you have to know how to, push the clutch and everything. And that's the same thing when you're starting with a ketogenic diet. You have no idea of what food to eat. You don't know what sort of ingredients are, basically within the ketogenic diet. And it all feels very overwhelming because you're trying to start something from completely scratch on. And so what I say to people when it comes to the ketogenic diet is that, okay, so let's justify payment, because a lot of people think about, ketogenic diet as being something of a luxury or something that, costs a lot of money.
Right.
Would you rather pay for cheap food, knowing in the end that most of the foods will bring you to such an unhealthy position that will cause either, it could be fever, it could be some of the other problems with the kidneys and everything. And I know there are other studies and other side effects that, yes, if you consume particularly too much fat, there are some people that will have probably kidney stones.
Right.
But if you do your research properly, there are other things that you can do to alleviate when it comes to kidney stones. So, for instance, for me, I did a lot of research upon that. And what I figured out is if you have problems with kidney stones, you're really worried about that. If you cut out spinach and almonds, if you cut the amount of consumption for that, then you will cut out the amount of oxalates that will be developing inside of the kidneys. So the thing is that you have to be very specific and very precise. And the sources that you need to go get to needs to come from sources from people who actually do practice the thing. Not once, not twice, years. You have to go with people who experience it and gone through the pain. And the other thing too, which is the biggest thing, you will never know the answer until you actually gone and done it. That's the same thing I say to people when it comes to me, learning the voice for Donald Duck. A lot of people ask me, it's like, doesn't it hurt, or isn't it like, how do you do that? And I can tell you, when I was 6 years old, when I figured out the first time, if you ask me, I will tell you straight out, I have no idea. Mm-hmm. I had no idea. So only fast forward till about, 2015, and now the pandemic kicked in. Started I to ask myself the question, like, how did I really get there? Like, how did I, started to connect the dots between the 6-year-old me who was very shy, I had no friends, I was developing as best as I could, and the only thing that I had as a reference at that time was basically the TV. Mm-hmm. And there wasn't much of internet, there wasn't much of anything else at the time. And so what I started to notice is that I decided to myself, you know what? I'm going to practice 2 hours every day. I have no clue how I'm going to do it, but I will do it for 2 hours every single day. And so that's basically me deciding, because that's the biggest problem. It's not really about like all the information. We have all the information in the world. The problem is, when are you going to commit and taking decision? And that's what's, the more scariest, the more painful part. Because once you make a decision, then you know that you have to go 100% in. And if you do make a mistake, this is what I'm going to say yet again. And I think last time we talked about, like, there is a passage in the Bible, which I find it really interesting. There's a lady that basically be taken for adultery. And, I think it was either the disciples or some other people who asked Jesus, like, in Moses, they shall be stoned, at least according to the books on there. So they asked Jesus, what sayest thou? Mm. And, Jesus was basically just, making some scripture down the stone. And the disciple again asked, like, what sayest thou? And he basically said, those who sin shall cast a stone upon her. Mm. And essentially no one decided to take the stone and pick that up. Now you might be thinking, well, what does that mean? Sin means if you made a mistake, stop judging yourself for it and pushing yourself off. Because I made thousands of mistakes when it comes to the voice. But in the end, because of all the mistakes, I've been getting up a step. Oh, I fell down. Oh, I figured out. Oh, I'm getting up. Oh, I fell down again. I'm getting up. I'm getting up. And there we go.
Yep. But that's all great. Some people don't listen to the internet. Some people don't get their information from people around them. Sometimes they only listen to their doctors. And not everybody will have doctors that are inclined to suggest the keto diet, and sometimes their doctors are not recommending this diet. So how do we do that? How do we communicate that to them?
Well, the thing is, first you got to understand, in terms of, as I say, we both were in a situation where most of our life, when we lived early on, we lived in ignorance. And I'm not saying that, to try to provoke, a different feeling. That was just the truth. I was very ignorant about, the idea of any other diets and so on at the time. And I had, no idea in terms of, getting through it. And the question is like, well, how can you change? Well, the question is that you need the knowledge and the understanding. So one thing is, yes, you go to a doctor, you have one side of the point. You need to check as many doctors or find the people who are much better at you that knows about the particular things that you don't know about. And that's the thing that I've been doing. So on YouTube, there are at least 4 or 5 sources that I see that has a consistency in what they're talking about. So for an instance, when it came to keto fluid, right, you asked me about that question. What most of them has been telling is that as long as you get enough potassium, sodium, and I think it was natrium. I think maybe I should just check in a little. Yeah, so sodium, potassium, and magnesium. Sorry. So as long as you get enough for these things, because as you say, the glycogen, basically the process, when you're going through the process, it will basically be requiring a lot more water. So you'll also be drinking a lot more water. And because it's basically, pulling that out, because the body needs some time to get adjusted.
Right.
And so that's what I'm saying to people. Like, you need to give yourself the time to adjust. And that's the same thing when it comes to habits. When you sit in the car the first time, you're not a pro. Like, you take whatever steps you got to do. You will think about it and you will do things. But after a while, if you've been doing it for about a month or two, it becomes automatic. You don't sit and worry and think of, all the issues. And so that's the same thing for me when I do research and, setting up a time. And we hear the excuses all the time. I don't have time, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, but that's because they're living in ignorance.
Yep.
they're not living in knowledge. If you want to become better, you have to be open to the idea of not only getting out of your comfort zone and getting more knowledge, and then understand it. And one thing is, as I say yet again, one thing is to intellectually understand it, like you read books, you take a look at YouTube videos. Now you got to apply it. You got to apply it. And that's where things get uncomfortable. Because, as I say for me, like, you know, doing the voice and everything, like I had no idea how I was able to do it. So, of course, you get uncomfortable with, like, you know, how you're going to figure it out. But for me, I've seen later on in my life, there are many people who can actually do the voice. But for me, it's like I use my left chin, you know, I make a muzzle, I breathe it onto the side, and I imagine myself how I would be if I were relating to Donald Duck. So in a lot of ways, it's a lot of like copying and then imitating and doing impressions. And that is the same thing that you're trying to do someone who has the ketogenic knowledge. You're trying to imitate and copy as much as they can, but you adjust it to your lifestyle. And as I say, it's very uncomfortable because the norm, as I say, it's very, very hard because you have to get out of what the other people are doing and find people who are doing exactly the same thing as you do. Yeah. Right?
Yep.
No disrespect to the people who are, you know, as I say, still holding to, you know, their past and previous beliefs. But in order for you to really see the truth and to experience it, as I said, commit a whole month. Cut out grains, cut out bread. I did it for myself. I wasn't fully able, and I will admit this, I wasn't fully able to get that kickstart. That's why I said June, July. Because, of course, there is this 1 week period that you will have, you know, this particular like fever. You will have a bit of the symptoms because the body's trying to get used to. So yes, there were a few times where I basically, you know, I couldn't hold it. But yet again, I tried again at July. I was saying like, look, I'm going to do it again and keep on going. And that's the thing. So that's why I say, make sure to build a habit. Start simple, right? You don't have to be in a race for getting into the ketogenic diet. Start interchanging things.
How would people do that? How would people slowly integrate themselves?
So let's say there's a particular type of food, like, for instance, bread and grain. I already talked about that. That was the first thing that came to my mind. I said, you know what? I'm going to drop that completely the first entire month. And what I will basically say is find everything in your house that contains grain and gluten. Anything that contains it at all. And make note of it and basically discard it. And the next time you're going to the grocery store, anything that you can either switch or you can, as I say, supplement, which you can use, like, for an instance, there is almond flour. That's another like great composite.
Almond
if you
flour.
if you can't like get away from the fact you want to have something like bread, or you want to have something that's crispy. yeah. So it's all about the psyche of either you change something or you think of the better and think, okay, what are the couple of things that I can basically hold on to? And that is within the ketogenic diet. And just, slowly. And as I say it very slowly. The same thing came when it came to sugar and chocolate for me. There was a time where I was eating an entire 200-gram chocolate plate. And I had to, within the 2 first of that week, I had to basically start like chopping it down. So I would only take maybe the 2 sets of the bars. Maybe I went from 3 to 2. And then, just slowly dissecting it until it becomes like you've only taken one. And you think like, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm getting to that point. Like, I might as well just drop it. Right? But that's what I'm saying. Like, the same thing can be applied to people who are smoking. The same thing can be applied to people who really, they know it intellectually. They know that's not good for them. They know it intellectually. but it's the emotional aspect, the experience, that becomes the difficult part. And so you have to be a bit brave, and you have to slowly like step down, like in very small increments. And eventually you will basically tally out. The same thing with me with the voice acting.
Yeah. You have to be open to the idea. You have to know there's options there for you. And it's not just the traditional way of taking medicine if you're diabetic. There's a whole lifestyle that you could switch to that doesn't require you taking medicine, right? And again, it could be just changing your lifestyle, changing your consumption of, the carbohydrates. And if you do your own research, you got to be open to a lot of changes, right? And it doesn't have to be sudden change in the diet, like you said. You could, slowly integrate yourself into this diet, right? So talk to me about intermittent fasting. I also do it. I simply just cut out breakfast. I'm not having breakfast, and I've been doing this for a couple of years now, and I feel great about it. And tell me the benefits of intermittent fasting and why you're doing it.
So I put it in another analogy, and think of it when it comes to eating as a road. You have a toll place, a toll system, and the toll is making sure that everything that kind of comes in will take its time to make sure that all the wares that you have on that truck is, being consistent, that it abides the law, and, that the things that it kind of contains, is going to be beneficial to the system, right? And so whenever you eat something, it's like you have only one road, and the only one road is through your canal. Now, whenever you eat something, it takes a bit of a period before it's going to go through the whole thing. I'm also a educated dental secretary as well. So, dental health and all the other things, they're very connected in a lot of ways. That was even the first thing that I was curious about before I went to the ketogenic diet and everything. Is like we had a challenge between the patient and, other regular doctors about the diet, because the previous notion was, okay, 4 meals, but the problem is they eat, maybe breakfast, and there's like a little small eating, like a snack, and there's a lunch, and then dinner, and maybe another snack, and then dessert, or, maybe some other things that kind of goes in, and then like nighttime. And so think of the road like every time you're basically consuming something, your body is working its best to digest and to take everything and to spread out and to distort. So I have only been eating either 2, 1, or none. The none time, I only drink water, added with a bit of sea salt. I may, it's as I said, I usually do this if I really want to reset. Like if I feel there is, a couple of things that, I want to do. If I'm not training or, doing exercise, I sometimes feel, doing, zero is usually the best. But if you do the 1 meal or OMAD, that's also quite workable. Or 2, that's like the minimum. And the two meals are, you could say it's either the 18 to 4 hours, so 18 hours of fasting where you're not eating, and then you have a 4-hour like a window, 4-hour window of when you can eat something. And the most important thing is that the break is supposed to give your system the time to really dissect and to spread all these things. Like we have a nervous system that, works in a lot of ways. And it takes time to sort of the nervous system to, take things and to basically distribute all around the body. And so if you've been feeling a lot of cramp, and especially for me that I had like through the early experience, especially when I was not even eating the ketogenic diet, but even when I was getting over, that usually is the signal that either you have enough, you don't have enough magnesium, potassium, or sodium in the body. Another thing too with the flu as well you could do is called MCT oil.
All right, MCT oil.
MCT oil is quite beneficial. It's like if you consume dairy and so on, it takes a bit of time for the body to sort of digest it and getting it and turning it to ketones.
Yep.
But MCT oil just basically
While you're on fasting.
While you're fasting, yes.
Okay.
While you're fasting as well. So
yep.
And also in the as I say, when you get the ketogenic flu, it can be a help supplement to sort of get enough ketones in the body, because as I said, it's the adjustment, right? You're going from glucose to ketones.
What is the longest time that you've gone without food?
I tend to, as I say, I go for the 18 hours period. That's usually the thing with me. You can also do, I don't remember what the episode was, but there's like a 16, I think like maybe, was it like 6 hours or is it like
16 and 8?
16 and 8, yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So when you're doing the reset, how often do you do it? The one day that you're not having anything, how often would you do that?
I say it's very dependent, because like, as you say, you're trying to sort of monitor the things that you're consuming, and then, you're trying to basically, figure out and adjust. So if there are a few times I feel, like if I haven't been doing a lot of exercises, I kind of feel like I just need to like, restore a little bit. I might do that maybe once in a week, to kind of do that. And it's not, as I say, it's very dependent. You have to really, ask yourself the question of when you feel that maybe this is the time to just do it. I wouldn't necessarily say to recommend to do it like on and off, like all the time. I say maybe the minimum, if you really want to reset things, is probably like once in a week.
Okay. So going back to the ketogenic diet, I want to ask you this, and it's such a major change in your lifestyle, and I want to let people know that there are tools out there that you could utilize. You could go to World Wide Web, your internet. You can search anything that you want to know about. You could read books. And what was it for you that helped you early on or until now that you're still doing, that's keeping you accountable and keeping you going on this diet?
Well, as I say, I have multiple YouTube channels. They're sources that I do check in from time to time. I subscribe to them. Probably, if you're going to link it, I could probably give you the link later so they can go ahead and take a look at the different
we'll link
sources.
it down below. Okay.
Right. In addition to that, I say I invest my time at least maybe an hour or two to make sure to go through, a set of, taking a look at studies, making sure to sort of check out with the sources of people, and also re-looking at the videos, because that's another thing too that I find is very important. Even if you've seen the video once, it helps to repeat and to go through it multiple times. Even sometimes for me, I tend to maybe write it down either on the computer or maybe on the iPad, or even better on pencil and paper. This just makes it so that I get a lot more accountable with the things that I do, right? And I can find the information, pretty quickly if there's a few things that I find that I need to sort of check out to. But this is really, as I say, this is not just something that you can just lay off and so on. This is, of course, homework. And I know it can be very boring for a lot of people because, you might be having a work, you work maybe like 8 or, I don't know, in Canada or any other countries, but like, you might be working more than maybe 7 or 8 hours. But I think like for your overall health, and not only physical, but also mental, if you really want to become better, you have to really spend your time studying not only the material, but also another big question, which you should ask, is, do you know as much about yourself as you think you do?
Mm-hmm.
Or is there maybe some other sources of people that you should imitate or to try to be able to replicate to get that information as well?
That's awesome. That's awesome. This has been great, Stream Dr. Duck, and there's a lot here to unpack, and I'm gonna go back and re-review this conversation because I think that there's a lot of value here. People would really, relate to what you went through, and I really appreciate you sharing your story. And I'm so glad that we both found keto diet, and for most people that are skeptical about this diet, all you need to do is be open in the idea of having that another option. You don't have to listen to your doctor. You could have a second opinion. You could, like Stream Dr. Duck found his doctor where directed you to this diet, and which is, you're very, very lucky to have a doctor that knows of the diet and would recommend it. That's very rare, because for me, when I asked my doctor about this, she basically said that she does not recommend it. And how do people be proactive if their own doctors discount this type of diet? And so there's so much value here. Again, guys, if you have to be open-minded. It doesn't have to be the keto diet. It could be other types of diet that rich in nutrients, and you could do your own research. Again, there's the internet for you that you could get all of your information. You have this podcast where I'm bringing in guests that has that wealth of knowledge and that experience about the keto diet. You can go back and re-review this conversation. And thank you so much, Stream Dr. Duck. I really appreciate you. And for doing that Donald Duck impression, if you could do that one more time for us, that would be perfect.
Thank you, everyone. Make sure to take care of yourself now. And make sure to do your absolute best.
Stream Dr. Duck, everybody. Hey guys, thank you for listening in. If you like this, please make sure you follow us. And if you think this story can change someone's life, please share it. We really appreciate you. And until next time.